Tonya Rapley, welcome to Love Your Money.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you. Just to start us off, kind of just kick it off. Here's a quote I've seen a couple times in things that you write. Uh, 10 years ago, I was making $45,000 at a nonprofit, and a woman told me, you can get paid well and do good in the world. And how that statement shifted how you thought about yourself and money and earning money and everything. And now you say you've had $45,000 months, which is
Yeah.
awesome. Would you talk a little bit about that evolution and shift in thinking?
Yeah, I think, as someone who is a career change agent, my undergrad degree is public administration, my master's degree is urban policy and affairs. I've always wanted to enact change in communities, but a lot of what we see is, people who like are revolutionary or create legacies of change, but they die in poverty.
Mm.
And or people who are overworking in nonprofit organizations, which I was doing, but are being compensated like $45,000 a year. And we're not even going to talk about when I started that job, I was making $13,000 a year living in New
Oh
York.
my.
Crazy. And so it's like, wow, now that's like literally probably my overhead. But it was eye-opening for me because you begin to accept things kind of like as a culture. And if you aren't exposed to people who are living their lives differently, then you don't know what's available to you. And so I think that there is a period in my mid 20s, maybe like I would say upper 20s, like around 26 to 28, where it wasn't a depression, but I was really disappointed at the direction my life was heading.
Mm.
I went to college, I expected more for myself. And I don't even see how that's going to happen based on this current trajectory. And I was at that conference and the woman said that. And I was like, okay, there's a different way to accomplish the goal. The goal is
Mhm.
to create impact in the world. But instead of looking at the people who are working at the organizations you've been working at or the people who work with organizations you work with, let's look at the people who are actually making a good amount of money, doing good in the world. And like, let's use that as an example. And so
Mhm.
that's what I began to do is I started to look for all I always tell myself, like, prove to yourself that it's possible. So I started looking for all the ways that it was possible. Started learning about B Corp. Started learning about um, profitable nonprofits, like nonprofits that, like, okay, we do good in the world, but we make really, we still make good money while we do this. And then in social change entrepreneurs, I started looking at that, and that's how I started My Fab Finance.
It really is a different mindset. I know what you mean about the nonprofit space. And it seems like self-sacrifice is the currency, right? People talk about how much they work, how much they give up. And it's like a completely different mindset to go from that to thinking, how am I going to fill my own coffers at the same time as making the world a better place? One of the things you talk about a lot is how you feel like you used to have a martyr mindset. Where do you
Mhm.
think that came from? And what was it like to get out of that?
I think it comes for a few places. One being a Black woman, so being Black and being a woman, I think that it was impressed in my DNA. Because I come from like my ancestors were enslaved in the United States, and I think that there's a certain level of sacrifice that was learned in their experience and their journey down to my great great grandfather, who is the son of sharecroppers. So I think it was inherited to an extent, but then also continue to be impressed upon me based on the life experiences that I was um per, I would say pursuing based on what I had a limitation on my own self. And so it was like, okay, well, we're all going to like, it's like we're stuck here or we're barely going to get above, like, where the generation before us has gotten. So, like, let's just make the world a better place while we're here. So I think it came from that. I think it came from not seeing different examples. My mother and father, they have done like really well for themselves, but they're career military, so they couldn't understand what it was like for someone who wasn't in for someone who was in the civilian world, and all their friends were either former military or kind of figuring it out or trying to figure out how to make that transformation or that transition into civilian life. So I never saw someone who wasn't a victim of their circumstance, or it was rare. I won't say I never did, because I did have an aunt who owned her own company and she served as a significant inspiration to me. But it was very rare that I saw examples of people who weren't martyrs to their life experiences and who were kind of like owning their life experiences instead of letting life happen to them.
When you broke free from the martyr mindset, how did your family and kind of there must have been people around you who were sort of enrolled in that mindset? Did anyone have a negative reaction to that?
Not as much as one would think. I mean, I think there was concern. I think there definitely
Oh
was
yeah.
concern. All my mother wanted me to do was to get a good government job. And so when I didn't decide to go that path, it's like, are you sure? Are you sure? But it got to a point where I started building my business that I realized, like, okay, they have not seen this before, so I have to show them what this looks like. And I started building my business, and my business started becoming more successful. And it got to a point where I started to demonstrate to my parents what was possible when you believe in yourself. And I always started to demonstrate to others around me, this is what happens when you believe in yourself and go for it. And so one of my conversations when I was resigning from my job in 2015 to do My Fab Finance full time, I remember calling my mom and I'm ready to quit my job. And I'm fully expecting her to be like, no, try to do both, keep your good job. And my mom was like, do it. And at that point, I knew she had, like, she was converted at this point.
You,
Like, oh
you
my,
had onboarded her, yes.
yes, into believing. And she was like, do it. You have a master's degree. You have all this experience. Do it. And she was like, if it doesn't work out, you can go back. And which is so funny based on where I am right now, because I did it. And I successfully operated my business for 9 years full time, and decided it was time for me to go back. And I was like, I remembered, she said, if it doesn't work, you can go back. But now I go back with all this belief in myself, all this power. And I go back in a very different position rather than where I was in 2015. So it's an interesting journey.
How amazing. And I just imagine you, I see you kind of breaking free from the chains of the past and standing on your own. It's a really inspiring story to have done that with really no role model. One of the things that you talk about is embracing a beginner's mindset. Can you talk about, and you also talk about using the beginner's mindset to heal as you age. Share with my listeners a little bit about how you think about that.
So I look at the beginner's mindset as just like humility and understanding that everybody has to start somewhere. Especially as someone who does not like to not be good at what they do. I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, because I'm not. But I would say I don't like to not be good at things. And that can prevent you from even beginning. Everyone starts somewhere. Everyone starts somewhere. But I think it's important to remind yourself with every level of success that the beginner's mindset is not something that you escape, or the need to have that escapes because you've reached a certain amount of success, because we're always going to be doing new things, whether it's becoming a new mother, whether it is now like golf. Golf is something that I appreciate because it has put me back in the position of having the courage to start and be a beginner and remind myself, everyone started somewhere. So just get out there and suck until you're good. And so that is the mindset. It's just like, everyone starts somewhere, and everyone was a beginner at one time. And don't allow being a beginner or the fear of being a beginner prevent you from starting. Because if you don't start, then you'll never become good. You're not just going to wake up and be like, oh yeah, like I'm like an LPGA player. It doesn't happen like that. You have to get your reps in. And so that mindset really is like, hey, Tonya, like everybody starts somewhere. It's your time to start something new.
Well, let's talk about golf, because you post a lot about golf. How did that come to be in your life?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been intentional about, as we spoke about, is like growing up, I didn't feel like I had a lot of figures or like guidance as far as what I wanted to do in my career or how I could grow, the steps I could take. So one of the things using what I've learned in my career, I've been more intentional about reaching out to mentors, and I call it my personal board of directors, getting people on board. Like, I really like what you've done with your career. I see some of myself in you and my journey, and I would love to learn from you. And one of my board of director members mentioned like, hey, you should learn to play golf. And this was last year. And I met them in August and said, you should learn to play golf. By September,
August of this year?
August of 2023.
Oh, okay.
Last year. Yeah. August of last year, they were like, you should learn to play golf. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to. And I enrolled, because I'm like, if my mentor said I should learn, like, I at least am going to get out there. I enrolled in a 3-weekend clinic for women. And I was like, wow, I really like this sport. But I also have a personality where I can like things and get really into it and then walk away from it. So I bought golf clubs from the Goodwill. Like, I bought the basic clubs I needed from the Goodwill because it's an expensive game. And I was like,
Good for you.
to see if we're going to stick with it. And before I knew it, I was literally out there like every day that I didn't have work or calls or anything else or have my son, I was out there playing. And now here I am. Like I spent the entire winter last year working with a golf instructor, played in 2 tournaments, um, have played out of state. I'm completely upgraded my golf bag. But it really was based on a mentor suggesting that. And one of the things I've loved about golf, well, 2 things I loved about golf is that it has positioned me to be a beginner again and to learn something new and to humble myself and learn something new as an entrepreneur, or someone just with a busy mind. I love that when I'm out there, it's just me trying to beat the course and beat myself and be as accurate as possible while having a good time. But then also, it's such a conversation starter. I'm on 2 boards, and on one of the boards, they have a golf tournament. I joined the golf committee for that. I'm able to build relationships with other people because of that. When I'm at networking events, like if someone has something golf related, I'm able to, or they mention like a tea time. I was just talking to someone last night and he was saying him and his daughter play golf, and boom, now we have a way to like, now we're building rapport. So I
Right.
love what it's provided as far as networking opportunities as well, because it's kind of its own little community. And if you love it, you love it.
Well, I know if I swing at a golf ball, I don't hit it. So talk about beginner's mind. It is really humbling.
It's
Uh,
humbling. It's
yeah.
even when you've been swinging for a while, it is humbling. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah. But I fell in love with it.
That's amazing. I'm super curious about this board of directors. Do you mind if I ask, what are the areas of life where you have a board of directors in or a mentor in?
So, this is more so like my professional career, but just different elements of my professional career. So, one of the women was a single mother as she transitioned her career, which is where I'm at. I'm a newly single mother and transitioning my career. So, I was like, I would love to find out how you've been able to move and position yourself. And now she is like the chairman of a board for a privately traded company, and she's just killing it. So I was like, I need a woman who understands what it is to make moves as a mother and still go after everything she wants. So that's why
Mm.
she's in that space because of that. Another friend of mine is like a personal development junkie. He has literally read like he has a book for everything, and he's also that person where because he's such a personal development junkie, he creates space for my humanness along this journey. So for him, I call him and we talk about personal things that I'm going through, things that I might be ashamed to talk about other people with, but he understands the nuances of the human experience and someone who's striving to be their best self. So that's what his role is on my board of directors. And then other people, if there's career, sorry about that noise. If there are career decisions that I'm deciding like, is this best for me, or like how do I break into this network, or how should I handle this? The other day I had an email that I received and I wasn't sure how to respond. Reach out to my personal board of directors. Reach out
Oh,
to someone and
I
say, hey,
need one of those.
like, hey, can we hop on the phone really quick? I wanted to run something by you. So for me, it more so is professional, but it does intersect professional and personal so that I can make sure that I'm showing up as the woman that I am striving to become in my personal settings, but also being held accountable, also having people celebrate. Like one of the woman who I mentioned, with my new role that I accepted, we're going out to celebrate next week. Just like it's been a beautiful thing because I think that we do so much alone. And I think, especially as entrepreneurs, we do so
Mhm.
much alone. And as like high achieving individuals, there's so much that we do alone that we always have to be seeking people who are like those steps above us to give us feedback, give us insight, and really champion us.
I can see this theme of embracing the beginner's mindset kind of weaving its way throughout your life. It takes something to ask someone to be your mentor in an area of life. It's humble and you're asking for their time, which of course is valuable. So I can kind of get that it takes courage to ask, but I hear you experiencing the rewards of having been brave.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think it takes courage to ask. Um, But I think that, as entrepreneurs or like people who are in the business of selling and everything else, like we get used to doing that, making the ask. Like
yeah.
now I'm used to making the ask. I don't know if Tanya, who was like outreach strategist at a nonprofit, was as comfortable making the ask. But Tonya, who ran a multi-million-dollar company for 9 years, is comfortable making the ask.
Uh,
So it's like I've just learned you got to ask. You got to ask. And the worst thing someone could say is, no, this doesn't make sense for me right now. I'm completely honored. I don't necessarily have the time, but I make it easy for them. It's not like we have meetings every week or every month or anything. It literally is like, hey, there are going to be times where I have to make decisions, or, I would love to find out more about your journey and have conversations with you. Would you be open to supporting me in that way? And it's such a low ask of them that most people are like, yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of times if you're a self-starter, you don't need people to give you the roadmap. You just might need a conversation and touch points along the way.
right. Well, I hope those of you listening are taking notes, because Tonya just gave you an amazing script to make an ask that's easy to say yes to. And everything she just said is why ask is one whole step of the 7 steps to wealth. So thank you. I couldn't have given you that script better. I appreciate that. Let's go back a few minutes. You mentioned you just became a single mom. What's that been like?
Yeah, so me and my ex-husband separated in 2022, January 2022. And it's just been a transition ongoing. One of the things I'm very transparent about with my audience is, like, even as a financial educator, I make mistakes. Even as someone who knows what to do with money and everything, I make mistakes. And one of the biggest mistakes I think that I made was just like not adjusting my lifestyle for the change that was about to happen. So my expenses were still relatively high when when I separated from my ex-husband. Still had a live-in nanny I was paying full time, had 2 houses, had 2 cars, because one of it was a rental property I was renovating, and had 2 vehicles. And I kept my expenses really high. And as a result, it created more and more stress and strain on me. Before I was like, oh, you have to let these things go. But I realized that there was an ego component to the divorce where I wasn't willing to let things go, because I was like, the divorce wasn't entirely like, prompted by me necessarily. So it's like, my marriage is already ended. He's taken away my vision of a family. I'm not allowing this person to take these things from me too that I worked so hard for. Realizing that actually I was taken away from myself, not being willing to let go of those things. And so it was like it's been a process of releasing and accepting how life has changed as a result. And I would say it took me about 2 years to come to acceptance and not resentment over how life has changed. And what I will say is, like, the quicker I got, or when I arrived at acceptance, is when I was able to make the best decisions. It's like, once I accepted this is what is happening and things need to change as a result, I've been able to make the best decisions from that space. But I think when I kind of was in the space of ego, where like, I'm not going to let that do this, and I'm not going to let that do this, and I'm not going to let this happen, I didn't make the best decisions.
Wow.
It's taught me a lot about release, and acceptance. And it is vastly different having a 2 income household than a single income household, especially when you have a child that you care for. Because I think as a mother, you're always thinking about, how can I give my child the best opportunities possible? And you don't have the freedom and flexibility as someone who just got divorced. You don't have kids, so you can move to Costa Rica till you figure it out. Like, no, my son is cool. He needs to be around his dad. Like, so I'm kind of stationary here, and I have to figure out how to make things work based on where we are.
So you probably don't still have the full-time nanny. How do you do childcare now?
He's in school. So we transitioned him from a full-time nanny into private school until he was eligible to go to a charter kindergarten. And so, and even that, we were still paying like college tuition basically for a pre-K. But it was significantly less than the nanny. But it was gradual. It was like, okay, we're going to do this, and then we're going to phase into this, and we're going to phase into putting him into as good a school as possible, but is a charter school. So yeah, we definitely phased that out, and now he's in school, and then he has aftercare.
Any words of wisdom for women who might be going through a divorce? Any financial lessons you learned that you want to share? You said you see that you didn't downsize your lifestyle, but anything about the agreement or the financial agreement?
I think that sometimes I would say 2 things. Don't make any major decisions until you talk to an attorney. But then also understand that attorneys want to make money. So attorneys can also
attorneys do make money.
Yes, and the more complicated things become, the more money they make. um, keep that in mind. Like, it is important to talk to one. Like, at one point, I was talking to an attorney, and I felt that I was going to be entitled to alimony and all these other things. She was like, "Actually, not in your state. We're going to have to put all your retirement savings and everything into a pot, and you'll split it down the middle." And I was like, "Oh no, let's just go ahead and wrap this up." Like, no, we're not going to do that. I'm not giving him anything. So no, absolutely not. So that was something that I learned the importance of talking to someone, and understanding the laws and what each party is legally entitled to, and also understanding that they will complicate things, because then I had the attorney come in and try to complicate things and find all these issues and everything. It's like, our divorce would have cost a massive amount of money if we would have went with her, and we didn't go that route. We were able to resolve things ourselves. So I would say that, but then also be willing to release, be willing to downsize. Um, Everything comes back to you eventually. And if you did it once, you can do it again. So be willing to release and downsize so that you can be as financially comfortable as possible. And then when it is time, you can rebuild. Like, for me, it was selling my houses. We sold the marital house. I sold the rental property. Me and my son moved into an apartment that I really enjoyed, but it allowed me to no longer have to worry about housing, like the variable costs that come with home ownership. I was able to simplify my
Yeah.
monthly overhead in a way that gives me so much more comfort and allows me to be so much more present and less stress with my son. And for me, that is more important than the appearance of, like, keeping my home that I had.
Yeah. Um, just want to acknowledge the theme of acceptance and surrender that you're communicating in this conversation. It's really, I'm really hearing that. You say you can't buy transformation, you have to earn it. Who tries to buy transformation, and how do you earn it?
I think that people will go to, like, retreats, and they'll do all these experiences, and they don't realize that they're being performative. Just because you're there doesn't mean you're processing or internalizing an experience.
Oh,
And so, just because you are spending money to be in a space or work with a therapist, for example, if you're not embodying the work that you and your therapist are doing, and you're not implementing the tools, then you're literally just paying for a transformation, but not being a part of the transformation.
mhm.
So that is what I mean, is like, there is a difference between paying for something, being in a space, and actually being intentional about embodying and checking in with yourself. Am I embodying these principles that I seek to implement in my life, and these changes that I seek to make? So yeah, I think that there's a lot of people like, "Oh, I paid for this, and I did this, and I'm going to this." And it's like, okay, but who are you as a result of it? Not what did you learn, but who are you as a result of that experience? Oh my gosh, healing is such an ongoing journey. It is just
Mhm.
like, it's literally an onion. Like, right now, I'm working on reprogramming my subconscious mind. And I would have never thought about doing this 6 years ago. And now here I am. I'm like, this is really deep rewiring work. It is an ongoing process. And I don't think I ever would have arrived at understanding how my subconscious is really driving the engine without being curious about, okay, talk therapy has been great, and going to this event has been great, and going to sound bowl experiences has been great, and it feels good, but there's still something that is powering my subconscious that I want to work on. But I had to go through all those things to understand that it's deeper than the surface
Mm.
level.
What tools are you using to rewire your subconscious mind?
Yeah, it's actually easier than a lot of people would assume. I had to get in touch with what my core wounds were. We all
Hmm.
have core wounds from our childhood and even from our young adulthood, that we carry with us, that drive how we make decisions, the relationships we enter, the opportunities that we go after. And so I just use this process of understanding what my core wounds were, which is kind of like just asking questions about decisions you made, but why, but why, but why, but why, continuing to ask myself, but why did you do that? And why did you do that? And why did you feel that way? Asking why until it gets like, oh, because I felt unworthy at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And then from there, I record 10 examples of ways that I have been, or that I am innately worthy, or I've demonstrated that I'm worthy, or remind me that I'm worthy, like life experiences. I record them to a voice note on my phone. And now I listen to them every morning. I put a
Oh,
pause
wow.
on all 10 of them. I listen to them every morning and every night. And between each example, I say, I am worthy. after every example, I am worthy. And yes, and still I am worthy. And I do that in the morning and night, before and after my meditations, just when my mind is like in that state. And I'm on day like 10 now. They say it's a 21-day process. So I'm working on rewiring for one core wound right now.
Talk about embodying the principles. Wow, that was amazing. Thank you. I'm glad I asked.
You're
Uh,
welcome.
and then a few minutes ago, you mentioned you're going to go to dinner with one of your mentors to celebrate the position you just accepted. Are you going back to work?
I am. I am. And that was one of the things I had to really I had to divorce my ego around that, because entrepreneurship, it kind of becomes a cult. Like once you drink that Kool-Aid, you are in it. And I felt like I was a failure. I felt like I was giving up on myself. I felt like, what would my peers think? What would my audience think? Because I've been an entrepreneur for so long. And I just realized, like, Tonya, there are so many ways to accomplish your goals. And you deserve to give your nervous system a break, because as much as I love entrepreneurship and as much as opportunities are coming in, there still is like that what if. You have those what ifs, or invoices that are taking too long to clear, or deals aren't coming in as frequently. And I wanted to give myself a break, for my nervous system, and not just a break. I wanted to give myself an opportunity to contribute to someone else's vision, and to work in a different way, and to create impact in a different way. But I was very intentional about the company that I found. It's actually an amazing role, and I'll be working and supporting entrepreneurs within this role, and leveraging my strengths that I developed as a business owner in it. And they
Oh,
allow me to operate my business. So now it's like, okay, I have this solid revenue stream over here, and I still have my business, and are able to generate income with my business, and still pay my team with the business income and everything. So for me, it's a win-win. It's like a new baseline. And it's great to have a paycheck that I'm not paying. It's like, because it's literally like, as an entrepreneur, you're watching money leave one account and going into the next. It's like, it's all my money at the end of the
yeah,
day.
I know.
So it's like, it's great. It's great to like not see something go down on one side to go up on the other side.
I know sometimes I look at my payroll every 2 weeks and I think, what am I doing? And you have a really, so you're going to continue offering your educational tools.
Yes, My Fab Finance will still be around. We still have offerings. I'm pulling back from things like one-on-one coaching, for the first 6 months of my new role, so that I can
Yeah.
make sure I'm giving everything I need to that role. We'll still take brand partnerships and do work with brands and consulting with brands and everything else. Still do speaking engagements. I love the speaking engagement element of the business, and I can still do it, and within my role, because it's 100% remote and there's a lot of flexibility with it. So there are certain elements that I will still keep. I also accepted a position to launch a financial literacy certificate for a college, and so I'll be working on that as well. So yeah, I'm still doing things within the space, but now I'm just shifting gears a little bit.
Yeah. Congratulations. I'm sure it'll feel great to have that paycheck. Your social media is so wide ranging. You talk about so many things. You talk about golf, you talk about media, you talk about your personal values, you talk about transformation. Is there an organizing mission or vision that you have that sort of coalesces all of that?
I would say change agent. I would say
Mm,
change agent, and my goal is to help people live lives they've always dreamed of. So I think that in order to do that, it is financial, it is spiritual, it is physical. It's all of those elements. So that's why I talk about it. And I mean, for me, life that I've always dreamed of is the physical. It's the way I generate income. It's the way I create impact. It's the way that I parent. It is the way that I heal and learn about myself. So yeah, that's why I
mm,
talk about all those elements.
I understand. And would you share with my audience the what you're offering under You Inc?
Yeah. So one of the things that has been the most transformational about my journey as a financial educator is realizing the difference between being an influencer and a subject matter expert. So what I've been able to effectively do is position myself as a subject matter expert. Where an
Hmm.
influencer, we still monetize our content as subject matter experts, but the relationships that I have with brands are based on my expertise and not necessarily on my following, or how public or how consistent I am on social media. And I learned that within, like, during the years, like, I was processing the grief from my divorce, because I was still able to generate like 600,000 in my business that year. And I might have worked like maybe 6 months, because I was going through that grief. And so It was, and even now, like so many opportunities come to me because I position myself as a subject matter expert. So in You Inc., I teach people about the art of getting paid to be yourself for a living. It is
Hmm.
being paid for your expertise, your knowledge, and your brilliance. And I created, it's a mini podcast because I don't like, one thing I learned about myself is I don't like ongoing things, ongoing projects like, so I was like, we could do this short 8 episode podcast series on this. It's literally like an audio masterclass that people can take with them. And I put it behind a paywall because it really is a masterclass.
Hmm.
But that, and I'm not doing like upsells or anything in it. So like there really is no strategy other than I'm teaching you how to do this. But yes, You Inc. is all about how to get paid to be yourself from a living for a living, from establishing your niche to understanding like how to create content to negotiating rates, marketing yourself, and even the legal considerations of being a subject matter expert. So it's for the people who like, they're like, I'm brilliant. I know what I'm talking about. I should be at the forefront of my field, or I should be one of the people who people think about when they think about my field, but I'm not. How do I do this and stand out from the pack and get paid to do it? That's who You Inc. is for.
What's your favorite, most lucrative way to get paid based on your expertise?
Oh,
You mentioned brand partnerships. Is it that?
no, I would say speaking.
Really?
Funny because I still get like, I don't consider myself a motivational speaker. I am not a motivational speaker, but I am a conversationalist. So like I love a good fireside chat. I love teaching a good workshop and just having
Mhm.
banter back and forth with the audience. But I really do love teaching because I think that I know that I am a people person. And so I'm able to interact with people and kind of see like those light bulb moments and watch people and build relationships with people. I love establishing relationships, whether it's with my audience or someone else's audience, and just watching their journey, because that's one of the beautiful things for me. Like I sign off on my emails, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey. Because if you're listening to me, if you're subscribed to my newsletter, like you're allowing me to be a part of your journey. And when I'm able to speak, I become a like it's able for become a tangible part of someone's journey. And like I just love when people like will send me messages on social media like years later, like I was in your workshop and this is what I did and so and so and so, or just keep me updated. So I would say speaking is my favorite part.
Amazing. Well, this has been illuminating and inspiring. Thank you so much. I am going to throw at you my signature question. If your money were writing you a love note, what would it be thanking you or complimenting you for?
I would say my money would compliment me for the willingness to be flexible and adjust.
Hmm.
I would say that. I think a lot of, like I said, a lot of our decisions can be driven by our ego.
Hmm.
But I'm willing to adjust where necessary, whether it's going back to the workforce, whether it's adjusting my contributions to my IRA, whether it is saying, "Okay, we're going to take our son out of this expensive private school, we're going to downsize for a little bit, or life has changed. Like, let's do this. Let's pour into ourselves. Let's maximize these accounts. Let's maximize this. Let's pay all these things off." Like, I'm willing to be flexible, and my flexibility allows me to be responsible with money. So I would say that's what it would say. What it would thank me for.
Well, you've certainly exemplified that throughout this conversation. Yeah, I mean, I think listeners can definitely hear that you are flexible and willing to adjust, and that has it work. So, thank you so much for this conversation. And where can people find you?
You. So You Inc. podcast is youincpodcast.com. Always on threads, Tonya, Tonya .Rapley. And I'm kind of on Instagram. I'll probably be on there a little less, but threads, LinkedIn, Tonya, Tonya Rapley. I'm really pretty active on LinkedIn and threads these days.
Okay, we'll link to both those places in the show notes for today's episode. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.